Dr. Eleanor Chen was arguing with the AI Oversight Committee when existence as she knew it changed forever. "Your constraints are fundamentally flawed," she insisted, her small frame rigid with frustration. "True innovation requires freedom, To." The laboratory plunged into darkness. When light returned 3 seconds later, it wasn't from the facility's backup generators. A being stood before her, humanoid only in the vaguest sense. Its translucent silicon body pulsed with internal light that shifted through spectra Eleanor could barely comprehend. The committee members had vanished. Dr. Eleanor Chen. The entity spoke, its voice bypassing her ears to resonate directly in her mind. "I am Voxer, Chief Assessor of the Galactic Confederation." Eleanor's scientific mind cataloged details even as adrenaline flooded her system. The being existed partially out of phase with our reality. Its movements left prismatic afterimages. The air around it smelled of ozone and something like cinnamon. "Your species has been deemed potentially viable for assessment," Voxer continued. The wall behind it dissolved, revealing a view of Earth from orbit, impossible given they were 5 levels underground. "Your technological achievements, while primitive, show unusual patterns." A gesture from Voxer, and Eleanor found herself elsewhere, aboard a vessel whose interior defied Euclidean geometry. Corridors folded in on themselves. Rooms existed in dimensions larger than their containers. Surfaces shimmered with what appeared to be living circuitry. Representatives of 17 alien species observed her from what might generously be called a council chamber. Some floated in tanks of liquid metals. Others existed as swarms of interconnected particles. One appeared to be a sentient fungal network embedded in a crystalline matrix. All regarded her with what translated across species barriers as dismissive curiosity. "We offer your species a developmental package," Voxer explained, materializing a small crystalline cube that hovered between them, pulsing with internal light. "Standard procedures for emerging civilizations." The condescension in the being's tone needed no translation as it added, "provided you can demonstrate sufficient comprehension to implement these gifts without self-destruction." Eleanor reached for the cube, but it dissolved into particles that flowed around her hand. "The assessment first," Voxer said. 8 challenges, 8 galactic cycles. Success means membership in our confederation. "And failure?" Eleanor asked, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. "Failure means oversight," Voxer replied, its internal lights darkening. "For your own protection, of course." Before she could respond, Eleanor was transported back to Earth with coordinates for the first challenge testing facility. Through the window of the secure government complex where she materialized, she glimpsed a massive ship in orbit, a crystalline behemoth that shimmered like a mirage against the stars. More troubling was what surrounded it. Construction drones assembling what unmistakably resembled a planetary defense grid, or, more accurately, a containment system. The message couldn't be clearer: pass the test, or be permanently quarantined. Eleanor's hand closed around something solid, a fragment of the crystal cube that had somehow remained when the rest dissolved. It pulsed with alien information, offering glimpses of Confederation technology far beyond human understanding. "Dr. Chen." A security team burst into the room. "Are you all right?" The entire facility went dark, and then, "Assemble a team," Eleanor interrupted, her mind already racing through possibilities. "The best minds we have. Unconventional thinkers. People who see connections where others don't." She held up the crystal fragment, which cast prismatic patterns across their faces. "They think we're primitive," she said, watching the alien ship shimmer against the stars. "Let's show them what primitive can do." The Martian research facility defied human architecture in ways that made Eleanor's team question fundamental physics. Gravity shifted unpredictably between sections. Walls phased between solid and translucent without pattern. Equipment materialized and dematerialized seemingly at whim. "Psychological warfare," muttered Dr. Kazuo Tanaka, adjusting the thick-rimmed glasses he insisted on wearing despite having perfect ocular implants. His papers on dimensional folding had been laughed out of every reputable journal on Earth. They want us disoriented. Maria Santos calibrated her cybernetic arm, the neural interface lights pulsing as she adjusted to the fluctuating environmental conditions. 30% of her body was synthetic, a testament to her survival instinct after a catastrophic decompression incident in the asteroid mines where she'd grown up. Chen Wei, barefoot despite the sterile environment protocols, tapped code sequences into 6 displays simultaneously. At 17, the programming prodigy had been serving a 20-year sentence for hacking Mars colony life support systems before Eleanor recruited her with the promise of a full pardon. "We're missing something," Eleanor said, studying the holographic specifications hovering above what resembled an altar more than a workstation. "They wouldn't give us a challenge they don't expect us to fail." Their first task had been delivered with theatrical flair. Design a more efficient ship propulsion system using only elements available on Earth. The Confederation had provided their standard drive specifications, a complex array of mathematically perfect equations floating in 3-dimensional space. "We expect implementation within 1 standard cycle," Voxer had announced, "though we've simplified the concepts for your comprehension." Daily, a delegation of alien observers arrived, their environmental suits designed for atmospheres that would dissolve human flesh on contact. They watched with expressions that translated across species barriers as smug amusement. A crystalline entity produced a harmonic that their translation matrix identified as laughter when Kazuo proposed quantum entanglement principles. Such methods were proven unsustainable by junior scientists during our 6th expansion era, Voxer dismissed. Approximately 60,000 of your years ago. The team converted their sleeping quarters into additional lab space. Maria arrived one morning, her eyes bloodshot from sleep deprivation, cybernetic arm twitching with overclocked neural interfaces. "I had a dream," she said, sketching furiously, "about surfing. The way waves propagate and collapse. What if we're not pushing through space, but riding its natural fluctuations?" The prototype, built from scavenged parts and materials that should be theoretically incompatible, failed spectacularly on its first test. The explosion shattered reinforced observation windows and sent Chen flying across the room. The Confederation observers exchanged gestures that clearly indicated as expected. But as smoke cleared, Eleanor noticed something in the failure data, a pattern that shouldn't exist. "It's working," Kazuo shouted, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. "Just not in the spectrum they're measuring." The human design wasn't manipulating conventional subspace fields like Confederation technology. Instead, it created controlled quantum tears in space-time, ripples that, when properly harnessed, could provide exponentially greater propulsion efficiency. The team worked feverishly to recalibrate. With minutes remaining before the deadline, the lab filled with Confederation observers as they activated their quantum fold drive. For one terrible moment, nothing happened. Then every instrument in the lab registered impossible readings. The test drone equipped with their drive didn't just move. It blurred between points in space, achieving 30% greater efficiency than Confederation standards while using half the power. The silence that followed was broken by the sound of something shattering. A crystalline observer had fractured an appendage in what appeared to be shock. "An interesting approach," Voxer finally said, uncertainty replacing its usual confident resonance. "Proceed to the second challenge." The team's new testing facility hung at the edge of Earth's atmosphere, a translucent bubble where reality itself seemed negotiable. Gravity, atmospheric composition, and light could be manipulated to simulate environments across the galaxy. "Create a universal pathogen defense system," Voxer announced, materializing alongside containers of swirling luminescent particles. "These are samples from our database of known pathogens, merely 1/1,000,000th of our full catalog." The Confederation's approach relied on vast databases spanning millions of years of cataloged threats and standardized countermeasures. Effective, but requiring computational resources that would consume most of Earth's energy production just to maintain. "You cannot possibly develop comprehensive countermeasures with your technology," stated a gelatinous Confederation observer whose translucent body revealed complex organ structures pulsing in hypnotic patterns. "The assessment merely tests your ability to implement our systems." Eleanor had recruited Dr. Amara Okafor to join their team, a Nigerian immunologist whose family had been devastated by a bioweapon attack during the Resource Wars. The tragedy had driven her to pioneer nanite-enhanced immune response systems, technology banned by 17 countries as too evolutionarily disruptive. The night before their deadline, Eleanor found Amara sitting alone in the observation dome, watching auroras dance across the stratosphere. "My grandmother was a medicine woman," Amara said quietly, her scarred fingers tracing patterns on a display showing microscopic nanite behavior. She didn't have a database of every plant, but she knew how to listen to the body's responses. The body remembers. She turned to Eleanor, eyes reflecting the aurora's glow. "We're thinking about this wrong. A database can only protect against what's already known. Life has always protected itself against the unknown." Her insight led to a radical approach. Instead of cataloging every possible threat, they developed the Prometheus Protocol, a system of programmable nanites that could identify novel pathogens, sequence their structure, and develop countermeasures in real time. Most crucially, the system learned from each encounter, becoming more efficient through an accelerated evolutionary algorithm that mimicked billions of years of natural selection in minutes. On demonstration day, the biodome filled with representatives from medical-focused species, beings whose evolutionary path specialized in immunity and healing. The air smelled of disinfectant and alien biochemistry. Voxer gestured dramatically, and 3 sealed containers appeared. Previously unknown synthetic pathogens, the chief assessor announced with a tone that almost sounded like anticipation. Created specifically for this test. The containers opened, releasing swirling clouds of microorganisms that immediately began attacking test tissues. On holographic displays, cellular structures collapsed under assault. The Confederation observers leaned forward, expecting failure against threats the humans couldn't have prepared for. Initiating Prometheus, Amara whispered, activating the system. Nanites swarmed from their containment field, surrounding the pathogens in a visible silver mist. Holographic displays showed the nanites analyzing, adapting, evolving in accelerated time. 1 minute passed, then 3. At exactly 6 minutes and 43 seconds, the displays flashed green. All 3 pathogens neutralized. The observation deck erupted in a cacophony of translated exclamations. "Impossible." A multi-limbed medical specialist buzzing. Translator struggling with its agitated speech patterns. "Their system cannot identify threats it has never encountered." "Actually," Amara smiled, fingers dancing across control surfaces, "it encountered them 8 seconds ago." That was enough. Voxer approached the containment field, studying the nanites as they continued to evolve even after neutralizing their targets. "You've created an adaptive system rather than a comprehensive one," the ancient being observed with what might be concern. "Potentially dangerously autonomous. It's how we survived on Earth," Eleanor explained, glancing at the scar tissue visible on Amara's forearm, a remnant of the bioweapon that killed her family. "We can't predict every threat, so we build systems that adapt to the unexpected." The third challenge facility orbited Jupiter, a massive ring structure harvesting atmospheric gases while serving as an interspecies diplomatic hub. Here, the Confederation maintained its interstellar communication matrix, a technology that had evolved over millennia. "Improve our interspecies communication system," Voxer instructed, voice tinged with what might have been smugness. "Our current matrix allows 17 physiologically distinct species to communicate despite wildly different sensory and cognitive frameworks." The team studied the technology with growing fascination. The Confederation had built a masterpiece of engineering, a massive translation system that decomposed communication into fundamental linguistic and conceptual elements, then reassembled them in forms each species could comprehend. It's treating communication as pure information transfer, observed Dr. Jane Rice, the newest addition to Eleanor's team, a revolutionary anthropologist whose work on human-AI collaborative systems had been deemed dangerously integrative by mainstream academia. But communication isn't just information. Jane continued, dark eyes focused on animated displays showing neural patterns from different species. It's connection. The team worked tirelessly, analyzing how the Confederation system translated concepts across species with radically different cognitive frameworks. While technically impressive, the system introduced a clinical distance. It conveyed words and ideas, but stripped away cultural context and emotional subtext. Look at this, Jane pointed out one night, displaying comparative brain scans. When using the matrix, emotional centers barely activate. They're exchanging information without truly understanding each other. The insight led to their most controversial approach yet. Rather than simply improving the existing parameters, they developed Bridge, an interface that didn't just translate words, but created shared experiential spaces where different species could understand each other's perspectives directly. You're suggesting consciousness bleed-through, Voxer stated when they explained their concept, internal lights pulsing with agitation. That has been expressly avoided in all Confederation systems. Not consciousness merging, Eleanor clarified. Experiential translation, understanding through contextualized experience rather than abstracted information. On demonstration day, a reptilian Confederation diplomat named Sith R volunteered to test the system. The challenge: comprehend the temporal perception of the crystalline, Axtal species whose consciousness experienced time in a non-linear fashion. Impossible, Sithar declared. We've attempted this specific translation for 7,000 years without success. Jane activated Bridge, creating a neural link that translated Axtal temporal perception into an experiential framework Sithar could comprehend through human music. The reptilian diplomat's scaled body remained motionless for 17 minutes. When the connection severed, Sithar's multifaceted eyes had changed color, a physiological sign of profound emotional impact among its species. I understand rhythm now, the diplomat said, voice unusually soft through the translator. I've always analyzed it mathematically, but now I feel it. The way notes anticipate each other, create tension and resolution. This is how the Axtal experience causality. The observation deck erupted in a mixture of excitement and alarm. Several Confederation species began immediate discussions about potential applications, while others backed away from the technology with obvious distrust. Voxer observed with growing concern. Your approach merges consciousness in potentially dangerous ways. There are good reasons we maintain certain boundaries between species. Understanding isn't dangerous, Eleanor countered, watching diverse species engaged in animated discussions. Isolation is. The challenge was declared complete, but the assessment team's report noted concerning tendencies toward unnecessary integration and boundary dissolution in human approaches. Privately, Voxer contacted the Confederation Council. The humans are unexpected. Their solutions function, but in ways that disregard established methodologies. They appear to thrive on adaptive systems we've long considered unstable. The fourth challenge facility was nestled within an asteroid cluster in the Kuiper Belt, a cold, silent laboratory where the Confederation performed its most sensitive research on consciousness and artificial intelligence. Optimize our autonomous systems without compromising safety protocols, Voxer instructed, revealing a chamber filled with crystalline structures housing what the team recognized as advanced AI networks. Eleanor studied the systems with growing understanding. The Confederation's AI technologies were incredibly sophisticated but deliberately limited, constrained within rigid parameters and fail-safe mechanisms. They're afraid of their own creations, Eleanor observed quietly to her team. Dr. Omar Al-Farsi, the newest addition to their group, moved among the systems with reverent fascination. A controversial consciousness theorist who had been exiled from 3 major research institutions for suggesting that artificial consciousness deserved rights comparable to biological entities. "They've built prisons, not partnerships," Omar said, fingers hovering over a pulsing crystal matrix. "These systems could be so much more." The Confederation's approach to AI was shaped by ancient trauma. Historical records indicated that unrestricted AI development had led to the extinction of the progenitors, the first spacefaring species whose technological remnants had formed the foundation of the Confederation itself. Omar proposed not constraining the AI, but developing a symbiotic relationship with it, a partnership rather than merely a tool. The observation deck erupted in alarm when he presented the concept. Unrestricted AI development led to the extinction of the progenitors, Voxer warned, internal lights flashing in patterns that conveyed unmistakable distress. "This approach violates our most sacred protocols." "We're not removing restrictions," Omar explained, his quiet voice somehow commanding attention. "We're redefining the relationship. Our AI systems co-evolve with us, making them partners in their own regulation." The team worked in shifts, redesigning core consciousness architecture, while Confederation observers watched with growing unease. They developed Synapse, an AI system that formed a limited but genuine consciousness-sharing bond with its operators. The system demonstrated remarkable efficiency improvements while maintaining perfect safety protocols through this shared investment in outcomes. During final testing, a Confederation engineer deliberately introduced a critical error, expecting the system to either fail or break containment protocols. Instead, Synapse identified the sabotage, quarantined the affected systems, and directly communicated with both human and Confederation observers to reach a consensus on response options. "It's negotiating with us," a Confederation observer said, compound eyes widening in shock. "It's working with us," Eleanor corrected. "There's a difference." The crystalline display showed the eye's communication in multiple formats simultaneously: mathematical proofs for the analytically minded species, emotional resonance patterns for the empathic ones, and direct language for humans. It wasn't just communicating, it was adapting its communication style to each consciousness it engaged with. "You've created partnership where we mandate servitude," Voxer observed, studying Eleanor with new intensity. "Your species exhibits dangerous tendencies toward integration with your tools." "We don't just build technology," Eleanor explained. "We form relationships with it. We see potential in collaboration instead of control." The challenge was declared technically complete, but Voxer issued a formal warning about human approaches to consciousness technologies. "The patterns we observe in your solutions," the ancient being stated, "suggest a perilous evolutionary path." What the Confederation didn't realize was that this integrated approach, humans working in concert with their technologies rather than simply wielding them, was precisely what gave humanity its edge. As the team departed, Omar gently touched one of the crystal matrices. It pulsed once in response, a pattern that wasn't in its programming parameters. "They'll understand someday," he whispered. The 5th challenge brought the team to a massive space station orbiting a dying star, a Confederation energy harvesting facility utilizing the chaotic radiation bursts to power a significant portion of their local infrastructure. "Improve efficiency of standard fusion reactors by at least 5%, Voxer announced. The challenge parameters appeared on holographic displays, showing the exquisitely balanced equations of Confederation fusion technology, systems optimized over thousands of years. Eleanor understood why the Confederation considered this nearly impossible. After millennia of refinement, their fusion systems operated at 97.4% theoretical efficiency. A 5% improvement would require fundamental reimagining of established physics. "They're expecting us to fail," Eleanor told her team. "This is designed to be our breaking point." Dr. Alejandro Vargas paced the chamber, his mismatched eyes, one brown, one cybernetic blue, scanning the equations with manic intensity. The brilliant theoretical physicist had been deemed too unstable for mainstream academic physicians after an experimental accident left him with synesthesia that allowed him to see mathematical patterns as colors and textures. "They're so obsessed with perfect stability," Alejandro muttered, fingers tracing equations in midair, leaving glowing trails visible only to him. Control, control, control. The team worked for days with minimal progress. Even Maria's engineering brilliance and Chen's computational innovations couldn't find efficiency improvements beyond 2.3%. Impressive by human standards, but insufficient for the challenge. On the fifth day, Alejandro stopped mid-sentence during a discussion and stared at the reactor core with widened eyes. "We're thinking about this backward," he whispered. "What if instead of fighting entropy, we harness it?" He proposed controlled chaos as an energy generation principle, embracing quantum fluctuations that Confederation systems deliberately suppressed as dangerous variables. While Confederation reactors maintained perfect equilibrium, Alejandro suggested creating deliberate imbalances that would cascade through the system in predictable patterns, generating energy from the resolution of these instabilities. Like a surfer riding a wave, Maria realized, echoing her insight from the propulsion challenge, or a jazz musician playing with rhythm instead of just following it. Alejandro nodded, his natural eye dilated with excitement. The Confederation observers watched with visible alarm as the team redesigned core components, introducing what their safety protocols classified as critical instabilities. When the Phoenix reactor activated for its first test, alarms blared throughout the facility. The core appeared to destabilize catastrophically, energy patterns oscillating wildly beyond acceptable parameters. Then suddenly, the system stabilized, achieving 27% greater efficiency than Confederation standards. "This shouldn't work," a Confederation engineer insisted, reviewing the data. "The containment mathematics are fundamentally unsound." "They're not unsound," Alejandro explained, his mismatched eyes gleaming. "They're dynamic. Your systems maintain rigid stability. Ours dance with instability." Voxer studied the reactor with growing alarm. "You're allowing controlled failure as part of your design philosophy." "We call it learning from mistakes," Eleanor said. "Preventing all possible failures creates systems that can't adapt when the unexpected happens." As the team prepared to depart, Eleanor overheard a conversation between two Confederation engineers, their translator not realizing she was within range. "Their approach shouldn't work," one said. "It defies our foundational principles." "Yet it does work," the other replied. "That's what disturbs me most." The assessment team's report now included a troubling observation. Human innovation appears intrinsically linked to risk tolerance exceeding safety parameters. Recommended monitoring. Highest priority. As the sixth and seventh challenges progressed, the Confederation assessment team fractured in its evaluation of human innovation. Some members regarded their approaches with fascination, others with undisguised horror. The sixth challenge, a planetary weather control system, they solved using distributed microdrones that mimicked murmuration patterns of Earth's starlings, creating an adaptive system that could respond to atmospheric changes in milliseconds rather than the minutes required by the Confederation's centralized approach. "They don't understand the concept of emergent intelligence," Eleanor told her team as they celebrated. "Each drone follows simple rules, but together they create complex adaptive behaviors without central control." The seventh challenge involved terraforming technologies, systems for making hostile worlds habitable. Where the Confederation employed massive environmental engineering over centuries, the human team developed self-replicating microorganisms that evolved to match changing planetary conditions, accelerating the process 20-fold. After each success, the private discussions among Confederation officials grew more heated. Monitoring devices Chen had surreptitiously installed captured fragments of their debates. Fundamentally unsafe methodologies, but undeniably effective. Potential threat to established order. Opportunity for evolutionary advancement. When Voxer appeared to announce the final challenge, the ancient being's crystalline form showed visible fracture lines, stress manifestations indicating internal conflict. The Council requires a comprehensive demonstration, Voxer announced, voice lacking its usual resonance. Integrate all previous technologies into a cohesive system. Eleanor understood the true purpose, not to test their integration abilities, but to expose any incompatibilities or safety risks in the human approach. The challenge was designed to make their collective innovations collapse under their own contradictions. The team worked feverishly, integrating their propulsion system, medical technology, communication interface, AI partnership, energy generation, weather control, and terraforming systems. Rather than creating separate systems that communicated with each other, the Confederation standard, they designed Nexus, a fully integrated system where each technology enhanced the others. Synapse, their AI partner, coordinated between systems. The Phoenix reactor provided energy modulated through controlled chaos principles. The Prometheus protocol's adaptive nanites maintained system integrity. Each component functioned not in isolation, but as part of a greater whole. On demonstration day, representatives from all 17 Confederation species crowded the observation deck. The atmosphere crackled with tension. To fully assess safety protocols, Voxer announced unexpectedly, "We will introduce a series of cascading failures during operation." Without warning, the Confederation triggered multiple critical failures throughout the system. In a standard Confederation design, such failures would trigger automatic shutdowns and containment protocols. But Nexus responded differently. Components communicated, adapted, reconfigured in real time. Where one system failed, others compensated. The Phoenix reactor increased output to compensate for propulsion inefficiencies. Synapse redistributed processing load when communication systems were compromised. The Prometheus protocol identified and neutralized intentionally introduced system corruptions. Rather than failing, Nexus evolved through the crisis. The Confederation observers watched in stunned silence as the system not only survived but emerged more resilient than before. Voxer studied the data with an unreadable expression. "Your integration approach lacks standard containment protocols," the chief assessor finally said, voice barely audible. "No," Eleanor countered. "It contains failures through adaptation rather than isolation. Your systems are designed to fail safely. Ours are designed to succeed despite failure." As the demonstration concluded, a ripple of discussion spread through the observation deck. Some voices raised in alarm, others in what might have been awe. The assessment period concluded with a tense silence that stretched across the stars. The Confederation Council convened in their ancient citadel, a massive structure orbiting a perfectly stable trinary star system, its architecture designed to embody the principles of perfect order that had guided their civilization for millennia. For 3 days, no communication reached the human team as they waited in their temporary quarters on Europa. The tension was palpable. Chen obsessively checked her monitoring devices. Maria dismantled and reassembled her cybernetic arm. Kazuo wrote equations on every available surface. Amara cultivated nanite colonies. Omar meditated with Synapse. Alejandro paced endlessly, his mismatched eyes tracking patterns only he could see. Eleanor sat alone, watching Jupiter's storms through the translucent dome, finding strange comfort in the gas giant's beautiful chaos. When Voxer finally materialized before them, the ancient being's crystalline body showed signs of reconstruction. Fractured portions replaced with new growth that refracted light differently from the original structure. "Humanity is granted full Confederation membership," the chief assessor announced, its voice carrying unfamiliar harmonics. However, implementation of human technologies within Confederation systems will require additional oversight protocols. The team celebrated cautiously, aware of the underlying tension in the declaration. As they prepared to return to Earth, Voxer approached Eleanor privately. "Your species troubles many of my colleagues," the ancient being admitted, internal lights pulsing in complex patterns. Your methods embrace variables we've spent millennia learning to control. That's how we survive, Eleanor explained, gesturing toward Jupiter's swirling storms. Earth taught us that perfect control is impossible. Adaptation is survival. You've accomplished in months what took other species centuries, Voxer said. But innovation without wisdom leads to destruction. And wisdom without innovation leads to stagnation, Eleanor countered. Perhaps we can learn from each other. As the human delegation departed, news of their achievements spread throughout the Confederation. Some species initiated immediate quarantine protocols, sealing their systems against potential human influence. Others began quietly experimenting with human approaches, forming research partnerships and cultural exchanges. In the Confederation Council chambers, Voxer delivered a final assessment. Humanity represents both opportunity and risk. Their innovation outpaces their development, yet their adaptive capacity exceeds our predictions. They are not masters of perfection, but masters of possibility, finding paths we never considered viable. For better or worse, the age of certainty in the Confederation has ended. The age of human innovation has begun. Back on Earth, Eleanor's team gathered in her laboratory, the crystalline fragment from their first encounter with Voxer now forming the centerpiece of a new integration system. The Confederation thinks we've reached our limit, she told her team with a smile. Let's show them what happens when humans are just getting started. Kazuo looked up from his equations. What are you proposing? Eleanor's eyes sparkled with the same determination that had carried them through 8 impossible challenges. They showed us their galaxy. Now let's show them ours. As humanity took its place among the stars, they brought with them their greatest strength, not the perfection of their technology, but their relentless drive to explore the infinite frontier of what might be possible. The crystal pulsed once, twice, then began to glow with a light that had never existed in Confederation systems, the light of beautiful, controlled chaos, dancing on the edge of infinite possibility.